Grayson Hart's lungs burned as he broke through the waves. Eyes locked on the figure caught in the riptide, he didn't know her name, only that she was drowning fast. "Hold on," he shouted, pushing harder against the water until his arms were screaming and his legs nearly gave out. One more stroke and he reached her. She was limp in his grip, her long dark hair tangled around her face, her mouth barely above the surface. He wrapped one arm around her torso and kicked hard toward shore. The beach was a blur. All he could think about was her weight in his arms and the small hand tugging at his heart from the sand behind him. "Daddy, is she okay?" His daughter, Kenzie, cried as he dragged the woman onto the sand. Grayson dropped to his knees, tilting the woman's head and starting CPR. "Breathe," he whispered. "Come on, you're not dying today." After a few tense moments, she gasped. Water spilled from her lips as she coughed violently, eyes fluttering open. She blinked, dazed. Where am I?" "You're on the beach." "You got caught in the current," Grayson exhaled, heart still pounding. "You're okay now." A few tourists had gathered, but Grayson waved them away. He threw his towel over her shoulders and glanced up at the little girl clinging to his leg. "It's okay, sweetheart," he told Kenzie softly, patting her head. "She's okay." The woman looked up at him, her voice raspy. "You saved my life." "Part of the job," he said, trying for casual, but his chest was still tight. "I'm Grayson." "Grayson Hart." She sat up slowly, brushing wet sand off her arms. "I'm Kiera Summers." The name didn't register. She looked like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, stunning, even soaking wet, with striking green eyes and a kind of effortless grace. But what mattered more was that she was alive. Later that evening, after the beach cleared and Kiera had been checked out by paramedics, Grayson sat on the edge of a Lifeguard tower, watching the sunset. Kenzie curled into his side, already half asleep. "You saved a real princess today, Daddy," she mumbled. He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Not a princess, baby, just someone who needed help." But the next morning, everything changed. He was unlocking the beach gear shed when a sleek black car pulled up, tires crunching over gravel. A man in a tailored suit stepped out and scanned the beach like it offended him. "You Grayson Hart?" he asked. Grayson nodded, wary. The man handed him a letter. "Miss Summers cordially invites you to dinner tonight, 7 sharp. The address is inside." Grayson frowned, rubbing the back of his neck. "That's not necessary," she insists. Before Grayson could argue, the car door opened again and out stepped Kiera. This time she looked every bit the heiress she apparently was. Hair smooth and shiny, dress crisp, heels in hand as she walked barefoot across the sand toward him. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said, her voice soft but confident. "You saved my life." Grayson glanced at his daughter, who was now building a sandcastle with a plastic bucket. "I'm not exactly the black tie dinner type." "It's not black tie," Kiera said, smiling, "just dinner." "And a thank you." He hesitated, but her eyes held his, and something about the way she looked at him like he wasn't just a lifeguard or a single dad trying to make ends meet made him nod. "All right," he said, "but I'm bringing Kenzie. I don't leave her alone." Kiera's smile widened. "I'd love to meet her." That night, Grayson stood in front of a mansion that looked like it belonged in a movie. He felt wildly out of place in his cleanest jeans and button down, holding Kenzie's hand while she twirled in her favorite pink dress. The butler, an actual butler, opened the door and led them through marble hallways and glittering chandeliers until they reached a private dining room. Kiera was already there, dressed simply but elegantly, and she stood when she saw them. "Hi," Kenzie's jaw dropped. "Are you a real princess?" Kiera laughed. "No, but I guess I do live in a castle." Grayson pulled out a chair for Kenzie, still feeling like he'd stepped into another world. Dinner was incredible: steak, roasted vegetables, dessert that melted in your mouth, and Grayson tried not to gawk. Kiera didn't mention her last name or her wealth, but the house spoke for itself. "So, what brought you to my beach?" he asked after dessert. Sipping water, she hesitated. "Honestly, I was trying to get away from all this for a while. No one knows I'm back in town. I was alone, swimming too far out, and then you saved me." He nodded slowly. "You're lucky, I know," she said, meeting his eyes. "Lucky you were there." Kenzie was curled up in a velvet chair by the fireplace, already asleep. Kiera stood and walked to the window, arms crossed. "I haven't felt safe in a long time," she said quietly. But when you pulled me out of that water, I don't know, something inside me just stopped panicking. Grayson joined her by the window. Everyone's drowning in something, I guess. She looked up at him. What are you drowning in? He exhaled. Bills, work, trying to be everything for my daughter. Her mom left when she was 2. I've been on my own ever since. Kiera's eyes softened. That's a lot. Yeah, he looked at her. But I wouldn't trade her for anything. I like that about you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't know what to say. She was beautiful, rich beyond imagination, and yet she was standing here, looking at him like he mattered. I should get her home, he said, glancing at Kenzie. Kiera nodded but didn't move. Can I see you again? He raised an eyebrow. You mean, like a date? She laughed gently. Like getting to know the man who saved my life. Grayson ran a hand through his hair. You sure you want to mix with a lifeguard who can barely keep the lights on? I've met a lot of rich men, she said. None of them ever looked at me the way you do, like I'm just a person. He stared at her for a moment, heart thudding. All right, he said. Let's see what happens. As he carried Kenzie to the car, Kiera walked beside him, barefoot again, the moonlight catching her smile. She wasn't just the woman he'd pulled from the ocean. She was the wave that was about to crash into his heart. Grayson adjusted the strap of Kenzie's backpack as she skipped ahead of him through the weekend market, the morning sun painting golden streaks across the rows of vibrant awnings. He wasn't used to being noticed, but since the dinner at Kiera's mansion 4 days ago, he'd caught more than a few curious glances. Not at him, but at the striking woman who had shown up on the beach a second time, barefoot again, holding a thermos of coffee and a paper bag of cinnamon rolls like she belonged there. She had returned the next morning without warning. No entourage, no makeup, no pretense. Try these, Kiera had said, handing him the bag as if she hadn't walked out of a luxury estate hours before. They're from a bakery downtown. You can't live here and not know them. He had taken the bag warily, but the sweet, warm scent had made Kenzie squeal. That simple gesture had sparked a rhythm neither of them acknowledged, but both fell into without question. Coffee in the early hours, walks along the shore, her laughter blending with Kenzie's every time she knelt down to help her collect shells or chase seagulls. Now, as they made their way through the clustered stalls of handmade jewelry and fresh produce, Grayson found himself watching Kiera more than the path ahead. She wore a loose blouse tucked into faded jeans, her hair pulled into a low knot, and not a single soul around them would have guessed she had once been splashed across the cover of financial magazines. You're staring, she said, pausing near a flower stall. Should I be flattered or concerned? Just trying to figure you out, he replied, eyeing her as she lifted a bouquet of wildflowers. You're not exactly easy to read. Good, she said, brushing her thumb over a petal. Mystery keeps things interesting. Kenzie tugged at his hand. Can I pick some strawberries? There's a stand near the fountain, Kiera said before he could answer. I'll take her. Grayson hesitated. You sure? Kiera leaned down and offered her hand to the girl. Kenzie and I are on a mission. We won't be long. He watched the two of them disappear into the crowd, his chest tightening in a way he hadn't expected. This wasn't part of the plan. He wasn't supposed to let anyone get this close, not to him, and definitely not to his daughter. When they returned, Kiera was holding a basket brimming with berries and Kenzie was chewing happily, red juice smeared across her cheeks. I think she bartered with the vendor, Kiera said with a grin. She offered one of her sand dollars in exchange for an extra scoop. Kenzie beamed. He said it was magical. Grayson raised an eyebrow. That's so. The day passed in a blur of sunlight and sea breeze. They ended up sprawled on a blanket beneath a weathered palm tree, Kiera reading aloud from a children's book while Kenzie rested her head against her shoulder. Grayson sat back, watching them, something foreign tugging deep in his chest. It wasn't just the ease with which Kiera fit into their day. It was that she was choosing to be here, choosing them when she could be anywhere else. Later, as the sun dipped low and the air turned cooler, Grayson packed up their things while Kiera helped Kenzie into her hoodie. I have to ask, he said as they walked toward the parking lot. Why are you really here? Kiera stopped, glancing at the horizon. I needed to breathe. And I didn't want anyone to know where I was. Running from something, she turned to face him. Running toward something, I think. I've spent my whole life doing what was expected. School, charity boards, public appearances, inheriting responsibilities I didn't ask for. I wanted something real. And then I almost drowned. Grayson nodded slowly. Near-death experiences tend to rearrange priorities. I didn't expect to find this, she said, motioning toward Kenzie, who was now spinning in slow circles a few feet away. I didn't expect you. He rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know what you think this could be, Kiera. We're from different worlds. I'm not asking for a world, she said. Just a chance. Grayson didn't answer, not immediately. The sun was almost gone now, the last light catching the edges of her hair. He could feel the pull of her in his bones, the way she didn't flinch from the mess of his life. Okay, he said finally, but I don't do casual, and I don't let people in unless I know they're staying. Her response was quiet but certain. Then I guess I'll have to prove I'm staying. The next few days shifted subtly. Kiera didn't just show up, she stayed. She sat through sand-covered picnics, helped Kenzie with math homework, and even listened as Grayson ranted about the busted beach showers and the lack of funding for new lifeboards. She never offered money, not once, and he respected her more for it. But one night, everything tilted again. It was late. Kiera had stayed for dinner. Grayson's attempt at pasta had ended with takeout pizza, and Kenzie had fallen asleep halfway through a movie. Grayson carried her to bed, and when he came back, Kiera was outside on the porch, arms folded, her face pale in the moonlight. He stepped out beside her. You okay? She didn't look at him. My brother found out I'm here. Grayson leaned on the railing. That bad? He's not just my brother. He runs the family trust now. And he doesn't approve of me being anywhere without a security detail or an agenda. Sounds controlling. He says it's protection, but really it's about optics and me spending time with you. She let out a bitter laugh. That's not the image they want. Grayson felt the familiar flicker of defensiveness rise. If it's going to cause problems for you, maybe we should. No. She grabbed his hand suddenly, her grip firm. I don't care what they say. I'm not walking away from this. From you. He searched her face, trying to find a crack in her resolve. There wasn't one. Then she stepped closer. Do you want me to go? No, he said, the word escaping before he could stop it. She leaned in, and for a moment, there was only the hush of the ocean in the distance and the heat between them. Then she kissed him, slow and certain, her hands curling into the fabric of his shirt. When they pulled apart, Grayson didn't speak. He didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, something in his world felt unshakably right. And she was standing right in front of him. The air in the gallery buzzed with the quiet hum of conversation, clinking glasses, and the subtle notes of a live string quartet floating from the far corner. Grayson adjusted the collar of his blazer, which didn't quite fit right across the shoulders, and resisted the urge to tug at the cuffs. Kiera stood beside him, radiant in a backless black gown, her hair swept up in a way that left a few strands curling around her neck. He didn't belong here and he knew it, but she'd asked him to come with her. Specifically, she'd said, I want you by my side when I show them. I don't care what they think. Now, surrounded by high society and oil paintings priced higher than his yearly income, Grayson knew exactly who they were. I didn't realize this was going to be a full-on gala, he muttered, eyeing a waiter gliding by with a tray of crystal flutes. Kiera leaned toward him with a calm smile. It wasn't supposed to be. My brother turned it into one after he found out I wasn't coming alone. Grayson's jaw ticked. So this is a setup. He wants to intimidate you, she said simply. Or humiliate me, possibly both. A man with sharp features and a colder stare approached, flanked by two associates who looked more like attorneys than friends. Ah, Kiera murmured under her breath, here comes the show. The man stopped in front of them, offering a handshake. Grayson didn't bother returning. Grayson, was it? He asked, eyes flicking down to the scuffed leather of Grayson's shoes. I'm Rowan Summers. Kiera's brother. Grayson didn't blink. I figured. Rowan turned to Kiera. You've made quite the statement bringing him here. I can't decide if it's rebellious or desperate. She didn't flinch. Maybe it's just honest. Rowan's gaze swept back to Grayson. How does a man like you end up in her orbit? Lifeguard, correct. Grayson stepped forward. I pulled her from the ocean when no one else was watching. That's how. There was a beat of silence before Kiera looped her arm through Grayson's, her chin lifting. Enjoy your party, Rowan. We're going to look at something real." She led Grayson toward the far end of the gallery, past a sculpture that looked like it had been twisted out of silver lightning. They stopped near a quiet alcove where the music softened and the crowd thinned. Grayson exhaled. "I've dealt with arrogant people before, but your brother takes the cake." Kiera leaned against the archway, her voice low. "He never forgave me for walking away from the family business. He thinks I'm wasting everything our father built." "You're not," Grayson said. "You're doing something harder. You're choosing your own life." She looked at him, and for a moment nothing else in the room existed. "I know this isn't your world," she said quietly, "and I didn't bring you here to prove anything. I just wanted you to see mine. The messy, entitled, suffocating parts of it. I've seen enough," he said, "and I still want to be here." She stepped toward him, her hand resting on his chest. "You always say exactly what I need to hear." "I don't say it to comfort you," he replied. "I say it because it's true." They didn't kiss, not here, not with polished eyes watching from every corner, but the way she looked at him held more heat than any touch could have conveyed. Later that night, back at his modest apartment, Grayson carried a sleeping Kenzie from the car. Kiera followed quietly, holding the small stuffed bear Kenzie had refused to leave behind. Once the girl was tucked in, her breathing soft, and even Grayson stepped out onto the narrow balcony. Kiera joined him, arms crossed against the night breeze. "I don't care what your brother thinks," he said, watching headlights trail down the distant highway. "But I do care what this means for you. If being with me costs you something important, I need to know." Kiera's voice was firm. "It's already cost me things, invitations, influence. A board seat I never wanted, but none of that matters, you do." Grayson turned to face her. "Then tell me what you're really looking for, Kiera, because it's not casual anymore." She didn't hesitate. "I want a future, not the one they picked for me, one with meaning. With real mornings and messy dinners and people who don't care what last name I have. You want something permanent." "I want something true," she said, "and I think I've found it." The wind picked up, and a sheet of paper flapped against the railing before floating down to the street below. Grayson looked at her, the weight of her words pressing against the deepest parts of him. "You sure you're ready for that?" "I've never been more sure of anything." The next morning, everything shifted again. Grayson arrived at the beach early, unlocking the gear shed with practiced ease. The sun hadn't cleared the horizon yet, but a sleek European car was already parked near the boardwalk. Kiera stepped out, holding a thermos and a folder. "Can we talk somewhere private?" They sat on an overturned canoe near the dunes. She handed him the folder. He opened it slowly. It held a legal document and ownership transfer. "What is this?" "I bought the beach access rights," she said. "And the maintenance contracts, it's all under a new foundation, nonprofit, fully funded for the next 15 years. Grayson's throat dried. "You what?" "I didn't want to own it. I wanted to protect it, for you, for Kenzie, for this place that gave me my life back. I never asked for this." "I know," she said. "That's why it matters." He stared at the folder, then at her. "What are you really trying to say?" She reached for his hand. "I'm saying I'm all in. Not just for now, for good." Grayson didn't answer right away. He couldn't. His chest was tight, not with fear, but with something bigger, something permanent. The tide was turning, and he was no longer trying to swim against it. He was ready to let it carry him forward with her. The hum of conversation faded as Grayson stepped into the ballroom, the weight of the moment pressing into his chest. He adjusted the collar of his navy jacket, freshly tailored his one indulgence for the evening. Across the room, standing beneath a cascade of white orchids strung from the ceiling like falling stars, Kiera radiated calm. Her dress shimmered subtly under the chandeliers, not flashy, not meant to dazzle, but it drew every eye because it was her. "Remind me why we're here again," Grayson asked as he approached, his voice low, his hand warm on her back. Kiera turned to him, her smile quieter than usual. "Because they need to see what we are, not a headline, not a scandal. Just real." The ballroom belonged to her family's foundation, an annual gala meant to impress donors and dazzle reporters. But this year, she changed everything. No red carpet, no elaborate press release. Just an intimate gathering of the people who mattered, and Grayson, standing beside her like he'd always belonged. "Has your brother said anything since?" "He won't speak to me," she said, lifting a glass of water from the table beside her. "But that's not new." What is new is that I didn't let him stop me. Grayson's gaze drifted across the room. A few of the guests had noticed him. Some nodded politely. Others looked away. He didn't care. He hadn't come for them. You know I'd have supported you either way, he said. You didn't have to do this. I know, she said. But I wanted to, because they've never seen me make a choice that wasn't curated. They've never seen me choose something they couldn't control. He reached for her hand. You didn't just choose something. You chose me. She tightened her fingers around his. And I'll choose you again, every time. A soft voice behind them interrupted the moment. Daddy, are the strawberries here yet? Kenzie stood in a pale blue dress, her curls pinned back with a silver clip. One of the waitstaff had given her a paper crown earlier in the evening, and she wore it proudly like it was made of diamonds. Grayson crouched. Not yet, kiddo, but I think they're bringing dessert soon. Kiera knelt beside them. I asked the chef to make sure there was something special for you. Kenzie grinned. Like the ones from the market, even better, Kiera said. Grayson watched the exchange with a tightness in his throat. Kiera didn't perform, she didn't pretend. She simply showed up for him, for his daughter, and it chipped away at something locked inside him for years. Later in the evening, after the lights dimmed and soft music filled the room, Kiera led Grayson out onto the dance floor. He hesitated, then took her hand. I haven't danced in years, he said. She placed his hand on her waist and smiled. Then you're overdue. They moved slowly, the music barely audible over the thrum of his heart. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. You're not nervous, he asked. Terrified, she whispered. But not about this. His voice was low. Then what? I've been given everything in life except the one thing I wanted most, something that felt real. And now that I have it, I keep waiting for someone to take it away. He pulled her closer. No one's taking anything. She looked up at him, eyes shining. You believe that? I do now. She didn't speak again, not for a long moment. Then she reached into her clutch and pulled out a small velvet box. Grayson froze. I was going to wait, she said, eyes steady. But I realized I don't want to wait anymore. She opened the box, revealing a ring not flashy, not oversized, but uniquely hers. A quiet band of gold with an ocean blue stone set in the center. I know it's supposed to be the other way around, she said. But you've already given me everything I never knew I needed, so I'm asking. Grayson stared at her, the room spinning, the music fading, the world narrowing to the woman in front of him and the weight of her words. You want to marry me? His voice was hoarse. I want to build something that lasts. With you, with Kenzie. I want every beach morning, every burnt dinner, every bedtime story. I want your world, not mine. Grayson didn't speak for a long second. Then he took the box from her hand and slid the ring onto his finger instead. She blinked. What are you? I'm saying yes. But I want to pick something for you too, something that feels like us. She exhaled, laughing softly as her eyes brimmed. You're unbelievable. You're the one who proposed. He kissed her, then not a soft brush, not a question, but a promise. One that echoed through every piece of him, still learning how to believe in joy. Later, when the gala ended and the guests trickled into the night, Kiera walked through the halls of her family's estate not as a daughter of legacy, but as a woman who'd chosen her own story. She paused at the grand staircase, her hand in Grayson's, Kenzie asleep on his shoulder. This place doesn't feel like home anymore, she said. Then let's make our own, he replied. Weeks later, they stood on the edge of the water behind their new house, a modest, sunlit home just 3 blocks from the beach. The sand stretched out before them, and the ocean moved with the same quiet rhythm they'd first found each other in. Grayson set down a picnic basket. Kenzie's going to want to see the inside first. She already claimed the room with the ocean window, Kiera said. She told the movers she's starting a shell collection. He chuckled. Of course she did. They stood in silence, watching the tide roll in. She turned toward him. You still feel like you're drowning, he shook his head. No, not anymore. Kiera stepped closer, her voice soft against the sea breeze. What changed? He looked at her. All traces of hesitation washed away. You didn't just pull me out, you stayed. And she always would. Because love wasn't about the world she came from, or the one he'd built out of scraps and survival. It was about the one they created together, anchored in truth, lifted by hope, and carried forward by the kind of tide you never swim against. You surrender to it, and you never look back. The wind carried the scent of salt and crushed hibiscus through the backyard as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting gold across the water. Grayson stood barefoot on the wooden deck, watching Kiera in the garden below. Her dress swayed lightly as she knelt to transfer a small basil plant into a clay pot, the dirt smudging her fingers. She looked up when she felt his gaze. "Don't say it," she warned playfully, brushing hair from her cheek with her wrist. He stepped down, crouching beside her. "Say what? That I don't know what I'm doing?" "You don't," he said gently, "but it's kind of perfect." She leaned into him, her shoulder brushing his. "We've got a backyard now. I want to grow something." "You are," he said, planting a kiss at her temple. "Every day." They stayed like that for a moment, the silence filled only by the gentle chirp of insects waking for the evening. Then her phone buzzed on the patio table. She didn't move. "You're not going to check it?" he asked. "It's work," she said. "They've been calling all week." "I told them I'd be unreachable." Grayson eyed her. "You sure that's still what you want?" She turned, hands still dirty. "I've never been more certain. I handed off everything, committees, boards, all of it. I gave them names of people who actually want to be there." "I'm not going back," he nodded slowly. "You made some people angry. I didn't ask for their permission. And you're okay with that?" She reached for his hand. "I didn't fall in love with you so I could stay the same. I'm not just okay with it, I needed it." He stood, pulling her up with him. "Kenzie's painting seashells in the living room. You want to help her finish the mural?" Kiera grinned. "Only if I get the sky this time. She always makes me do the sand." Inside, the living room walls were halfway transformed into a seaside masterpiece. Kenzie sat cross-legged on a drop cloth, a paintbrush clutched in one hand and an open jar of glitter in the other. "You're going to regret the glitter," Grayson warned. Kenzie looked up. "It's the sparkle off the water. You don't get sparkles without glitter." Kiera knelt beside her. She's not wrong. Later that night, after Kenzie had fallen asleep with a paint streak across her cheek and glitter in her hair, Grayson and Kiera stood in the kitchen, sipping cold lemonade. She leaned back against the counter, watching him with an expression he hadn't seen before. "What is it?" he asked. "I talked to someone from the foundation yesterday, quietly, off record." He set his glass down. "About what?" "They offered to fund a community center down by the marina. I told them I'd only agree if you were involved." He paused. "You want me to run it?" "No," she said. "I want us to build it. You know what this town really needs. They'll listen to you." He exhaled slowly. "That's a big ask," her voice softened, "but it's something real. And it's ours." The next morning, they walked the property together, a run-down storage lot near the edge of the marina, now signed over to the foundation through Kiera's direct request. She pointed out where the classrooms could go, where kids could come after school, where there could be a small first aid center for beachgoers. Grayson listened, adding ideas of his own: lifeguard training programs, water safety outreach, weekend classes for single parents. They stood side by side, not in a dream anymore, but in something solid. 2 months later, the center opened with a modest ceremony. No press, no ribbon cutting for show. Just neighbors, kids, teachers, and a table of cupcakes. Kiera had insisted on decorating herself. Grayson stood with Kenzie on his shoulders, watching the crowd filter through the open doors, the new sign above them reading, "Hart Community Center." Kiera stepped up beside him, her hand slipping into his. "Your name belongs here. So does yours," he said. "Maybe one day," she replied. "But right now, I'm happy being the one who gets to stand next to you." He leaned down and kissed her, slow and sure. That evening, they returned home to find a small, wrapped box on the porch. Inside was a card unsigned with only one line: "Some things can't be measured in legacy. Only in love." Grayson looked to Kiera. "Your brother," she traced the edge of the card. "It's his handwriting." He closed the box and set it aside. "Maybe that's as close as he can get to an apology." "That's enough," she said. For now, 3 weeks passed. The house filled with new routines: early breakfasts, Sandy's shoes by the door, Kenzie's drawings taped to the fridge. Grayson spent afternoons at the center while Kiera launched a beach cleanup initiative with local students. They met for lunch on the boardwalk, sometimes just to sit, sometimes just to hold hands. One afternoon, Kiera came home with a photo album. She placed it on the kitchen table and opened it to the first page, an old picture of Grayson holding a baby Kenzie, both of them wrapped in towels and soaked from head to toe. "I asked your neighbor for some photos," she said. "He had dozens." Grayson flipped through the pages. "I forgot how small she was. You blinked. And now she's telling me I'm painting the jellyfish wrong." He laughed quietly. "You're part of that now." She closed the album. "That's all I ever wanted." That night, after Kenzie had fallen asleep with her head on Kiera's lap during movie night, Grayson stood at the bedroom window, watching the moonlight ripple across the ocean. Kiera joined him, her arms wrapping around his waist from behind. "Marry me this time," he said. She tightened her hold. "You already said yes." "I want to say it again, in front of everyone, in front of her. I want vows, I want cake, I want glitter on our shoes." She turned him around. "Then let's do it. But only if you let me wear a dress I can dance in." "Deal," he said, kissing her forehead. They married on the sand, just beyond where the tide reached. Kenzie walked down the aisle throwing painted shells instead of flowers. Their closest friends circled them. No media, no fanfare, just love. Grayson said his vows with Kiera's hands in his daughter beside them, their life laid out in front of them like the sea wide, uncertain, full of promise. They kissed beneath a sky streaked with gold, and for the first time in both their lives they felt completely, absolutely home. And they never left.